No, indeed. And I guess literally with the benefit of Foresight, the company that you work for, but also the industry you're in, the time that you've been in, and also as a sort of a mindful consumer, what technologies or what's on the horizon that you're excited about?
Well, hydrogen, we already mentioned. I think it has
that's a game
great
changer,
potential. Great potential. I mean, it's not something you'll see happening overnight. But it has, again, because of what I mentioned as well, because it's extremely similar to gas in the way you can operate and use hydrogen. I think it could be, from a generation perspective, definitely, it can be a quick replacement of fossil fuel generation into something that is more sustainable. Obviously, we're talking about the ideal green hydrogen. And the other one that I think is quite exciting, it's carbon storage and carbon capture, which is, I mean, what we're seeing at the moment is that we're trying to reduce our footprint, but I think we reached a point where not only you have to be neutral, you have to be negative.
Yep.
And there are, for example, one of the technologies we're seeing out there that can already deliver negative carbon footprint, it's biomass associated with carbon capture, for example. So it's a technology where the technology itself, it's well understood. It has the potential to remove significant amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere. So it's an example of how we're already going beyond. It's not about neutrality anymore. It's what can we do to rectify what we have been doing over the last few centuries, really.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. But if we're talking about it from a financial perspective, an investor is investing in a renewable infrastructure, solar park, that's going to generate electricity, which is going to create yield for them. How does carbon capture create yield and therefore justify someone investing money in
carbon credits? There is a mechanism at the moment to incentivize low carbon or no carbon technologies and generation. So this is beyond generation. I mean, the carbon credits can apply to anything that also captures carbon. And for example, earlier we're talking about electricity prices. Gas has been causing most of this increase we're seeing at the moment, but there's also an element of carbon embedded in the electricity price because of the price of carbon in the carbon markets. So that is also increasing. So that's a tool that as well governments have to influence the transition into carbon neutral position, which is increasing the price that we're seeing on carbon. So that has a value. So it's a similar issue, which is also to understand, especially if you talk about the voluntary carbon markets, which is how do you quantify, how do you define exactly what each technology can deliver in terms of carbon emissions or the absence of carbon emissions. So, for example, is it the same to capture carbon or to plant a tree, for example, because also delivers the same result. But what we're seeing at the moment is because the carbon markets that you have available at the moment and incentives you have to reduce the usage of carbon is creating value that you can monetize, and that's how you make it work.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess it's particularly when you look at a longer dated yield curve. So we're talking 25, 30 years to get to net zero, and all the while those carbon credit prices surely are going to. Well, the scarcity of the carbon credits is going to increase, so therefore the value of them will increase as well. So actually, if you can find some device that just plucks carbon out of the sky, then that's on an upward curve.
And that's the point. It's not about, again, being neutral anymore. You have to go beyond that.
Yep.
We have to be negative.
Yep.
In order to revert the impact of climate change we have seen over the years. But there's developments, there's technologies that can do that. Again, biomass associated with carbon capture is probably the ones we're seeing with most potential.
Yeah.
In terms of how quickly you can build the economic case for the rollout of those technologies. And from my personal perspective, I think it's definitely one of the technologies you'll see implemented in the upcoming years.